My name is Katie and our farm is called Red Hawk Rise Organics. I run it with my husband Mike. We're located halfway between Harpers Ferry and Shepherdstown. Certified organic is a pretty complex process. It's regulated by, it's not actually a law, but it's close enough to a law, by a government policy and by third parties. So every year we have somebody come out to inspect the farm to make sure we're following the regulations. And the very basics of it is that it means we basically don't put anything into our system that isn't a naturally occurring element. So we don't use chemical fertilizers, we don't use chemical pesticides or herbicides. And in a more deeper sense, organic farming is all about managing the ecosystem and working with what you have and with the soil. So rather than trying to put stuff into the system, it's about kind of nursing the system and trying to make everything work for you and for itself. So not technically compost under organic regulations. What we use is leaf mulch, and what that does is like provides a ton of organic matter into our soil, and that feeds things that then feed the plants. We also do produce some of our own compost. This is our we're coming to the end of our third season. So because we're using a passive composting system, which means we're not actually turning the compost, we're letting it kind of decompose on its own, it takes a long time. And so we actually haven't even used our own compost yet. We're still adding to our pile, and then you wait a year and a half pretty much after you've completed the pile, and then you have usable compost. On organic farms, a big thing is cover cropping, and so we cover crop between any plantings. If we have two different plantings in the same bed in a year, we'll usually put in buckwheat cover crop, and then over the winter we'll either have in oat and pea cover crop, which is a winter kill crop, so it'll provide a mulch over the winter once the stuff dies, or we put in rye and vetch, which will live through the winter. And then all of that is also a form of composting, because when we mow it down and till it in, it's incorporating a huge amount of organic matter into the soil, which then is allowing the soil to do what it needs to do to release the nutrients for the plants that we grow. We use the high tunnel, and then when it's really cold, we also have a second cover of row cover inside the high tunnel, and that can basically change us from being the zone we are to being about like a full zone warmer, which puts us about a month ahead of where we would be able to grow. So for instance, we can put peppers in our high tunnel in mid-April, whereas we don't put them into the field until mid-May, which gives us, a boost on the season, and also gives us extended harvest at the end of the season when it starts getting cold again. And then out in the field, we also use row cover, row cover without the high tunnel, which also just protects things from the frost and puts them a little bit earlier than they would be if they were just uncovered out in the field. Every single time we plant, we put compost, or what technically is leaf mulch, on top of the bed, and then we either incorporate it in when we till or when we hand prep the bed, or we just plant directly into it on the surface. And the other stuff we do for soil health, a biggie is that we don't have a tractor. So tractors are they create compaction, which is not good for the soil system and all the stuff that lives in there. The stuff and even plant roots aren't able to operate the way they're supposed to when the soil's really compacted. So we do a lot to try to minimize compaction. We don't walk on our beds. We only drive the BCS on the beds when we have to. We use tarps to smother out weeds so that we can then come in and hand prep beds instead of having to till multiple times, which damages soil structure, or having to run machinery over. I came into this with a lot of knowledge of small scale production, because I was working on very small to very, very small urban farms where you had to figure out ways to produce a lot on small space, hoping to be able to create knowledge in the area for other people to grow food, because it is possible to grow food and grow a significant amount of food, especially if you're just growing food for yourself on a small space. And so I feel like we really could move away from an industrialized, import model of feeding ourselves if people, learned how to grow on whatever space they have. and we